What if there was a place where students and their entire families were supported and seen?
A campus that brings together students, teachers, and even entrepreneurs to reimagine what learning can be.
A place where students strive not just to earn good grades, but to become leaders in their environments and their communities.
It is all the parts of being part of a community that you could imagine. We have babies, we have teachers, we have nurses, we have teenagers, we have undergraduates, we have entrepreneurs who are working there to build out their businesses. It's just an incredible space, and it's a space filled with joy.
That was Elizabeth Moje. She's a literacy scholar and dean at the University of Michigan Marsal Family School of Education. And she's with us today to explain one of the most exciting education initiatives she's ever been involved in nurturing.
It's a 53-acre Mary Grove learning community located in Northwest Detroit. What was once the Mary Grove College campus, a private Catholic college that produced generations of teachers and nurses across the city, has been transformed into something special and much bigger. My name is Tracy Pearson, and I work on the communications team at the Kresge Foundation.
And I'm Jamie Bennett, and I work at the intersections of arts, culture, and equitable community development.
And this is Pathbreakers, a show about what it takes to cut through the noise and the red tape, to rise above the moment, and to stand up for your community, for justice, and for progress.
Every week for the next few months, you'll meet a different Pathbreaker. Today, you'll hear a story about a college campus that was on the verge of closure, one that also had the potential to transform its entire neighborhood.
But before we learn about the Mary Grove Learning Community with Dean Moje, Jamie and I want to introduce you to someone special, my boss, Rapson, President and CEO of the Kresge Foundation. We're going to talk to him about the complexities of working to expand equity and opportunity across the country.
The work that Kresge and others did at Mary Grove, it seems to me, were something of a microcosm of the challenges facing the city at large. In that if you chose just one dimension or one intervention, it just wasn't going to be sufficient to move the community in a direction that ultimately would lead to its health and vibrancy.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I think is commonly misunderstood about Detroit is that big bets are almost always accretive bets. They almost always build on a series of smaller bets that build into something with much larger possibility. The bankruptcy is a good example.
Rip is talking about the city of Detroit, which filed for the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history in 2013.
We couldn't have moved through the bankruptcy without the preceding 5 years of work on rail projects and land use planning and arts and culture and any number of other things. Mary Grove was the same. In many ways, it was a series of initially small moves that ended up becoming a very large move. One small move was whether we should try to stabilize the campus rather than permit it to go into foreclosure. Once we did that, another small move was, should it be a public institution or should we just get whatever kind of private investment activity might support its renewal and rejuvenation? We chose to go the public route. Then another was, should it just be a K-12 campus or should it be some other kind of more comprehensive campus? And we decided at first that the comprehensiveness of the move was actually essential to its success. We then said, well, should that then be joined with an early childhood move? So we went on and on and on. And what ended up was a series of 8 or 9 or 10 big decisions that ended up to be much more spectacular than any single one of them could have been. I think in some ways, the idea that there is a particular framework to coming at big challenges, I think is a little bit misleading. I think what you need to do is to sort of remain true to your basic method of trying to build community, try to build the capacity of community to take on bigger and bigger challenges, and ultimately to see that the small acts ultimately kind of congregate into something much larger.
Well, Rip, Tracy and I are about to take an extraordinary walk along a path that Kresge has trod. And we're going to get to visit with folks like Damian Wilson from the HBCU Brilliance Initiative, Fabiana Rodriguez, amazing artist, Marcia Black from the Black Bottom Archive Project. As folks listen to this next set of episodes, what are the stories that Kresge is looking to lift up?
I think first is values constancy. I think what you will see in the 12 Pathbreakers are folks who can adjust, adapt, modulate, do all of the things you need to do to remain relevant and effective. But ultimately, they never discard their value structure. And these are all folks with deeply, deeply held values, commitments to community, commitments to cultural heritage, commitments to social change, commitments to equity. That would be the first thing I would want people to hold close, because we are nowhere if we begin to sacrifice the value structures on which our work is based. Second is courage. It is not easy to do this work when there are threats, not only that your funding would be terminated or that people might attack you in social media, but fundamentally that the purposes to which you are committed may be changing, that you may have to adapt your work in ways that you never expected. And the courage to both hold on to your values and yet follow a course that seems appropriate to the people you serve is really quite something. Third is, I think, is sort of solidarity with community. And I'm sorry if that's a cliche, but I think each of these Pathbreakers are deeply, deeply rooted in their own communities. These are not people working at 50,000 feet trying to figure out the next generation of urban practice. These are folks who are every day talking with residents, talking with clients, talking with partners about where they need to go, where they need to change, where they need to remain constant, how they can work in unison, how they can be in solidarity in purpose of making cities more healthful and vibrant and sustainable. So I think those three values of values, courage, and solidarity are going to be something that you'll find in all of these Pathbreakers. They are a remarkable group of people, and they are also reflective of hundreds and hundreds of other folks doing the very same thing in hundreds of cities and communities across America.
Oh, well, I can't wait to get started. Tracy, where should we leave things for today?
Thank you for your time, Rip. I'm sure we will have a wonderful conversation when we wrap up this journey, and I look forward to talking to you again at the end.
Thank you both.
That was Tracy's boss, Rip Rapson, president and CEO of the Kresge Foundation.
Many private colleges across the country face existential threats due to declining enrollment and other financial issues. If a college closes, it's not just the students who lose. What happens to the surrounding community when a campus goes dark?
A community in Northwest Detroit came face to face with this challenge, and they broke an unexpected path.
And that's what we're going to talk about today with Dean Elizabeth Moje.
Rip Rapson, the CEO of the Kresge Foundation, has been yammering on about Marygrove almost as long as I've known him. And Tracy, who I think maybe you and Tracy first met when she was working for the mayor. You know, Tracy is almost as enthusiastic. And as someone who hasn't been to Marygrove, I apologize, I can't believe any of the things they're saying. So help me, what is this Marygrove miracle? What's happening? What is this place? Just help orient us to what this is.
Well, I think I should start, Jamie, by finding out what day you can come for a tour to Marygrove, to our Marygrove learning community. It is right that both Rip and Tracy talk about Marygrove and the learning community that existed there and that we have reimagined for the next iteration of education on that campus. It is an amazing space. It is the former Marygrove College. Many people in Detroit know of the college. Many of them attended it. And if they didn't attend the college. They might have attended school at what was a K-12 school, then became a K-8 school. It was run by the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and then by Detroit Public Schools, known as Bates Academy, and then was empty for a bit. This amazing 53-acre campus is now home to the Mary Grove Learning Community. It is a prenatal through graduate education experience. I recently had the honor of hosting all of the deans, the provosts and vice provosts from the University of Michigan at Mary Grove for the day. And it was a beautiful sunny day. The sky was blue, birds were chirping. And I said, it's always like this here.
All right. I love that. I'm buying my ticket. I'm coming Monday. I promise.
Monday. Well, I don't know. I don't know if we have time for you on Monday. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Sounds like things are. But so we're going to come back and we're going to spend most of our time talking about the bluebirds singing and the Skittles falling from the sky and the beautiful thing it is now. But what caused you and your colleagues and Kresge Foundation, everyone who came together to sort of believe that tomorrow could be different for this? Did you say it was 53 acres?
That's correct. 53 acres. Northwest Detroit neighborhood, Livernois and 6 Mile. The college was still going as we were beginning, but it was actually closing up. But we spent a lot of time in the neighborhood. We started conversations. We were actually thinking at Kresge's urging about 3 state-of-the-art early education centers throughout Detroit. And one of those centers, the advisory board that I was on, called Kresge Early Year Success Advisory Board, had identified this as a really robust neighborhood, a neighborhood with, such great potential, so many great community members, people who had lived there for a lifetime, really. And so we thought that would be a great place to really do early education well. And then the college realized that they were struggling financially and they were going to have to reinvent themselves. And so President Elizabeth Burns approached the Kresge Foundation and asked for help in this kind of reimagining. And because I was part of the advisory board, when Wendy Lewis Jackson announced, we're thinking we're going to put the Early Ed Center right on the campus, not adjacent to it, and said, we'd love to find a university to partner on K-12 education, I raised my hand because we are very deeply committed at Marsal Education to partnerships and to partnerships where our future teachers, future school leaders, future education researchers, and future ed policymakers can actually learn in the space and with the people who inhabit those spaces. So it was just a moment where everything came together and we started working together. President Burns and her faculty were instrumental in helping to make the transition. The sisters, some of whom still live on the campus, were also critical players in reimagining. So in 22, we opened kindergarten, first and second grade. We now have the Early Ed Center, then K through 4, and 9th through 12.
That's amazing. Now, Tracy, you've known Mary Grove as someone who worked with the mayor, as someone who works at the Kresge. You're also not that far from Mary Grove,
my
right?
family's been in the neighborhood since 1954. So I was definitely familiar with Mary Grove. I went to Bates Academy. My mother taught at Bates Academy. My aunt taught at Bates Academy. So very familiar with the campus. And I just feel like the campus and what you all have been able to do there, you can see the care. It feels like a hug when you walk on campus. It feels like someone cared. And not just the care in the landscaping in the buildings, but the care for the people that are actually on campus too. The teachers, the lounges, the areas for parents that have to come in for young people. It's just a jewel. I'm so happy that it's right there, that residents are able to see that personification of what real care and commitment and involvement and working together in partnership with Detroiters can look like. And I also think it's replicable. So one of the things I want to ask you, Dean Moje, is when you think about urban education, when you were sort of designing the curriculum, what were some of the things that were top of mind for you as you were sort of laying out what would the academic space look like on this campus?
Such a great question. I love to talk about the academic space and tie that back to the notion of care, because we know that, young people do need to learn. They need to learn content. They need to learn skills, both academic skills and what I call professional skills, what some people call soft skills, things like how to communicate, how to set deadlines and actually achieve them. But they also need to feel loved and supported. They need their assets seen as they walk in the door. They need to be engaged. They need to feel purpose and meaning. So from my perspective, especially as a literacy scholar, purpose and meaning are absolutely critical to learning. We don't learn things sort of randomly. We learn them for reasons, but much of school is done to children as if learning is random. They don't really have a voice in those standards that are set mysteriously by other people, whether it's in Lansing or some other part of the state. And we need to engage young children and older children. We need to engage their minds, their bodies, their hearts in learning. And so what we do at Marygrove is all project and place-based learning. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean every single moment is a child, or a set of children engaged in some kind of project. There's always room for a good just-in-time lecture from a teacher on a particular concept. There's always room for, more explicit instruction, especially as one is learning some kind of foundational skill, whether it's in first grade or in ninth grade. So we have a mix of things happening, but the goal is for everything to start with really meaningful questions that children are then investigating. And in those investigations, they're motivated to learn literacy, to learn mathematics, to learn science, to learn social studies, because those knowledge bases help us address the big questions. So to give some examples, our first year, we have a theme of design thinking and engineering for social change and social justice. And so our first year, the engineering teacher, who was our first resident, she decided, since they were engaging in a renovation of the building the ninth graders were learning in, that they should be part of designing the 10th grade classrooms. So she engaged them in a design thinking project around what would 10th grade classrooms, what would learning spaces that really support young people's development and their academic learning, what would they look like? What would they feel like? And then those students were able to present to the architects and the construction managers who were actually doing those renovations and get their feedback. And the people they were presenting to, all professionals, all, members of disciplines they might want to go into someday, could be mentors and models. And they could say things like, that's a really nice idea, but you can't pull that wall out because it's load bearing. Or that's a really nice idea, but we're going to lose historic tax credits if we take that wall down. So let's think differently. Let's pivot. And the kids then did iterations on their designs, and they again presented and kept getting feedback. That kind of thinking and that kind of work really pushes them to learn all of those skills that we want them to learn, but also to feel valued and feel like their ideas matter. And it gives them the chance to be mentored. So design thinking and engineering for social change and social justice. I could give you many more examples of the kind of curricular projects that we have going on. We take advantage of the now intergenerational space. So last year, the ninth graders were designing a play lab for the elementary school, which was short on play space. And the elementary students were the clients this time. And so they had to go and get their input, make some designs, go back to the children, get their input again, make more designs. And so that kind of iterative work, but also intergenerational work. And I don't know about you, but I remember, back in the day when I was in elementary school, we had to walk through the junior high school to get to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I
those
loved
people.
it. I could not wait to have a locker, to do all these kind of cool big kid things. And so this is a way that little ones are seeing where they will someday be. And I'll never forget the day we opened the Early Ed Center. And a very tall dad, was with this little, probably 3 or 4-year-old, and they stopped and they were holding hands. And Dad said to the little one, "Look up there. That's where you're going to high school someday." And that sense, this is very unique. We don't actually have many K-12 schools, right? In anywhere in the United States. And so to have that opportunity to imagine oneself in a different space, but the same space, is really exciting and really loving and supportive and bolstering for children. So that's how we think about teaching and learning, that it starts with the children. They're the center, and the decisions we make need to be focused on their well-being and their learning. And because we're educating teachers in the same space, they're able to see that lived out in ways that not all prospective teachers get to see.
So let's talk about that for a second. There's not just the Early Ed Center, not just the middle school, high school, but there's also a teacher college on campus? Or what's going on with the teachers learning on campus themselves?
Yes. Well, of course, we are a school of education here at Marsal. We have many opportunities for our students right from the very day they start our program. They are in classrooms. So their learning is both driven by what we know from learning sciences and theory, from research on learning, and by actual experience in classrooms. So we're constantly marrying those. This is not an ivory tower education program. That's really important to us. And so we're always looking for great partners to be able to serve as hosts for our placements for students to be learning in real time. When I say students, in this case, I mean our students of teaching. However, it's really hard to be in all those spaces. At one point when I started as dean, we had students in 365 different school settings around southeastern Detroit. That means we need to send people out to help them make sense of their learning. Their mentor or attending teachers, we call them, don't have time during the day to be doing, lengthy debriefs of, how did you think about that lesson, or how would you plan tomorrow's lesson? They do that, but they don't have as much time as our teachers need, right, to give them the full attention they need. So we have what we call field instructors, people who do go out to those settings. But of course, it takes a large group of people to go to so many places. And we were doing some work where we were studying medical education. We partnered with a physician and director of medical education at Oakwood, and then became Beaumont, and now is Corwell. And we actually went on rounds with his team, and he came on rounds with our teams. And we traded ideas about how we could each improve our instruction in our respective disciplines or professions. And one of the things that he said to a group that we had gathered was that in a teaching hospital, everyone has 2 goals. Everyone. One goal is patient care. The other goal is the learning of new professionals, the development of new professionals, whether they're physicians, nurses, lab techs, and more. And I had this aha moment where I thought, that's what we really need. We need a single space where everyone really is devoted to both children's learning and the learning of their teachers. And we've now expanded that to other child-serving professionals, like physicians who serve children, nurses, dentists, social workers. So our teaching school is all-encompassing, but it begins really with teachers. And so now we have a program where our interns have their first initial experiences. Then a select group will student teach at Marygrove and maybe beyond, because we have so many people who want to do this. We're starting to run out of room. And then another slice of that group will have a residency at Marygrove. And we already have residents. These are paid certified teachers. They're just like I was at 21 when I went off to Denver, Colorado, all alone and taught biology 6 times a day and hoped I was doing it well. Except our residents, who are actually certified teachers, have our support for 3 years. We've already started expanding residency because we have so many people. And the goal is that they will stay in Detroit. That's our number one goal, right? We're trying to actually scale by disseminating really efficacious and well-educated teachers who want to teach in Detroit. And so far, our residents are staying in Detroit. So we're really, really happy about that.
That's amazing.
I love that. So I'm fascinated by this, but I'm also sort of equally fascinated by you. So I know you started out as a drama teacher. You've mentioned you were trained as an ethnographer. Talk a little bit about how you got from teaching in Colorado to sort of being part of the team that's leading this.
Well, I actually
thing.
started my career as a history, political science, and biology teacher. And I was a drama director after school.
Director. All right. I like you even better now. I'm a theater kid.
I'm a big theater geek and was really grateful, actually, for having the opportunity to direct teenagers in theater, because I learned things about them that I didn't learn about them in biology class or in history class or political science. So I think that really started the path, actually seeing them in these different spaces. I also coached the cheerleaders, and so I had to drive a school bus around Metro Detroit, and I didn't know where I was going a lot, and the kids would help us get home. And that was really powerful because, if you think when you go into a classroom as a teacher that you know everything and the children know nothing, and that they're simply tabula rasa, blank slates to pour knowledge into, you won't be very successful. And we know this, education theory tells us that humans are not blank slates. They bring knowledge and experiences, and the best learning actually activates those knowledges and experiences and helps them build new ones, helps them expand, helps them connect ideas. So it was really good to be lost a little bit. That helped. And I mean that both metaphorically and literally. I also we had this great opportunity when I was a teacher in Denver we did Clubs Week, and every teacher chose something that they wouldn't normally be teaching and did it for a week with kids. And we had people did Mexican cooking class. They did, trips to New York. I had nothing. I could not figure out what I was going to do. I was 21. I was lost again. And another teacher invited me to do horseback riding. Now, I did not know how to ride a horse. And of course, the kids in Colorado, many of them knew how to ride a horse. So again, they were teaching me, rescuing me. It was just a really good experience. And I think that opened me up to learning more about who young people are, to learning more about their cultural backgrounds and understanding them as full human beings, which is what really took me into ethnography. It took me into the study of reading for a different reason, and simultaneously into the study of culture. Because of course, language and culture can't be separated. They feed each other. And if we want to improve children's literacy learning and their skills, we need to understand their cultural backgrounds, and we need to, again, activate those, let them know they matter to us, and then build on those and make connections. So that's how I got where I am today, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. What role do you think innovation and justice play in education?
I think that justice, I'm going to start there, is absolutely essential to education. I believe that when we see something unjust in education practice, we must repair it. We must intervene and work to correct it. So without justice, we are not fully educating all people. And I would probably say without equity as well. We talk a lot about access and opportunity. And everyone should have access and opportunity. But we all know that opportunity is not equally distributed throughout society. And we also know that even when an opportunity is put in front of someone, they might not be able to take advantage of it. And I'll use my own experience as a Pell student. Many colleges, I could get into many different institutions, but without Pell, I wouldn't have been able to afford to attend a post-secondary institution. That, I think, is about equity and about justice. And where we have not been just, and that might be historical, we need to look back and repair and redress those injustices. Now, innovation, for me, there are ways that innovation is related to justice. Certainly, as we seek to innovate and use all kinds of technology tools, we're going to need to think very carefully about justice and equity and bias and all sorts of factors as we innovate. But I can tell you that even at Marygrove, the students there do not have access to the same kinds of resources that will allow them to make use of innovations that we might be able to offer in education. For example, having the kinds of technology tools that can run really high-level programs that are necessary for fully learning, let's say, robotics, which we teach at Marygrove. We need to partner with others to ensure that our students have that kind of access. That is access to an innovation that, you could say all children have access to, but without the tools, they don't have the same access. So that would be a kind of unjust use of an innovation. I think innovation is also critical, though, in ways that people might not think of when they say that word. We tend to think of technology tools like artificial intelligence, like extended reality tools, which I'm super excited about and would love to do a different podcast on extended reality tools. But innovation is also innovating education opportunity by putting kids first. Mm-hmm. Because kids aren't always put first in our classrooms and in our schools and in our education policy making. I want to make sure it doesn't sound like I'm saying teachers don't put kids first, but in many dimensions of education. That would be an innovation. Using project and place-based methods is an innovation. We know from the research that this works, but that innovation hasn't made its way to all classrooms.
I have to say, I'm almost angry at this point because I have to call Rip and tell him that he was right about Dean Moje and how extraordinary she is. You are sort of the visionary leader you've been built up to be. Tracy, do you have the last bit?
I do. We're going to get into our lightning round.
A friend invites you out for a drink after work. What do you order?
Probably a glass of red wine.
When you think back over your own education, who's a teacher who stands out? A teacher of yours who stands out?
Ben Gibson was my high school history teacher. And if I name him, then I have to name Mike Kalmus, who was my one of my key history professors in college.
Beautiful. What's one word your students back in Denver when you first started would use to describe you as a teacher?
Young.
Would you read a book as a physical book, or would you read it on a Kindle?
I read on a Kindle because I travel so much and I can't carry books around with me, but I prefer a physical book.
I still get excited about the first day of school. What school supply do you remember buying that got you excited?
Well, I mean, the lunchbox. Come on. I had a Twiggy lunchbox, and you probably don't even know what Twiggy is.
I know exactly who Twiggy was. Thank you very much.
If you had a superpower in your classroom, what would it be?
To love every child, every moment.
Such a teacher, a teacher's teacher. We love that.
I love that. If someone had never been to Detroit, what's the first place other than Marygrove that you would have them visit?
I love the spirit of Detroit. Oh, and I love the Guardian building, and I love Hart Plaza, and every high school I've been in. I love Verner Avenue and Clark Park and the Mexican Bakery and Los Galanes. Oh, Michigan Central Station.
You're doing a driving tour, it sounds like.
I'm sorry.
You can't ask a bus driver what part of the city she likes
right.
best because she knows it all. Dean Moje, I can't thank you enough for everything you're doing for the neighborhood, for everything you're doing for education, for taking a little bit of time away from all of that to share some time with Tracy and me. But just thank you so much for everything you did. Tracy, take us out.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. We appreciate your contribution and for you being a wonderful Pathbreaker and partner on all that you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Pathbreakers is produced by the Kresge Foundation. Founded in 1924 with the mission to promote human progress, today Kresge works to expand equity and opportunity in America's cities.
You can read all of the Pathbreakers stories, as well as learn about Kresge's grant making and its social investing work in Detroit, Memphis, New Orleans, Fresno, and cities across the U.S. at kresge.org. And if you want to hear more conversations like this, please remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Our producers are Juliette Heinley and Zach Rosen. Managing editor is Krista Yonke. Show art provided by Rochelle Baker, and creative direction by Alejandro Herrera. Thank you to my colleagues on the Detroit program for lifting up Dean Moje as a Pathbreaker.
We'll talk to you next week.